So, hello everybody, visitors, and hello to our lovely friend from the community, new session of Holochain in Action. So in this session, we are going to talk about, or we are going to review the where application or where hApp. If you haven't seen the previous video, please go to the Holochain in Action YouTube channel. And in the previous one, we totally, for the full dedicated session, we talked about the where application, the philosophy, the blog, what's happening there. If you didn't see that one, I highly recommend to visit that one. And then for this session, we are going to do a code review in the application, opening the project to see how the thing is working. And also, it's really important to say that, again, previously, we have another session about the building blocks in the ecosystem of a holochain. And inside the building blocks, we already explained that there is a modularity. You can add a different block for your application. And today you also can see that how inside the where the profile as a building block is used, and actually also seeing that video can help you for a good and better understanding for architect and design your application. Also, I personally believe where it's one of the good examples. You can go see the infrastructure and how it is a good example as a holochain application. So thank you for Damien that for joining to our today meeting to help us to read a code much more better. So that being said, I would like to share my screen and open the project, read the project, and then ask Damien to help us to see how the things are working. So let me share. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
So first of all, where is the project? The project that any link, anything that we are going to talk, you can find them in the description. So the link, the GitHub repository is here. So, and don't forget to check out the Holochain in Action branch, because most probably in the future, other branches are going to be touched, but this one is going to be untouched, that can be synced to this video so that you are not going to be confused. So, and also let me mention, it is the Holochain in Action channel. Here it is the video that at least it's really worth it that you can see. It is all about the where, what is where. So I already opened the project. It is in the past, we review a few projects, but if it is your first time, you are watching a video or a project in a holochain. So again, most probably, as it is a convention in the ecosystem, when you open the project, there is a DNA, there is a UI, and other folder. So basically, the DNA, it is all about the holochain part, so that everything about the holochain application, architect, design, Zome, DNA, anything is here. And basically the UI, it is the user interface that it's connected to the actually backend side that traditionally we were calling it backend, but in our ecosystem, it is not anymore backend, but we can still call it backend. So if I open the project, I would personally, first of all, go to the package to see what's happening here, what we have. There are a bunch of things that I can read. So most probably you start, but this one is already, it is the kind of hierarchy. So we can go through it later to see what's happening if you run it or how you can run it. By the way, in the repository, there is a help how you can run where as a development. So I go to the DNA work directory. So this word dir is kind of convention, but you can have a different name, maybe other application. But generally inside there is a DNA and DNA YAML. If I open it, as you can see, generally this application has one DNA, that DNA has two different bundles as zones, that which is var and profile. Var, it is the zone. So, and a profile, it is the building block, that it has another repository, and we have a GM, and luckily we are going to review both of them. hApp, generally, it is telling us the application, how many DNA are inside the application. As you can see, it is a one DNA. So it is the way that I personally reading the application. So then I would go to the zones, different zone profile. As I mentioned, as you can see, nothing appears here because it is a building block. So where another zone, always I go here and take a look at the first entry definition path, telling us that what's happening inside of the data structure, path template. So a space here. So that's it. And then, okay, for the first layer to have a good understanding, I can say, let's continue our journey, and we are going to go back here again. So in the UI, we already reviewed this one. In the UI, there are two projects. So it means two folders, Lit and app. If I go to the package JSON, you see the new feature of the actually NPM. This is a workspace. Actually, it means we have a one lib. This is kind of convention. It means this project is supposed to create some library that others like apps is going to be used actually. So it means basically inside the lib, there should be something. So like always, I open the package to see who is whom, what's happening. I'm going to review, quick review. So, and rollup is here instead of as a package manager. So index. So I think we are going to review a little bit all of them. When we back, it's providing this library as an export to the apps as a var inside the UI. So, and then here it is the place that we are going to see the UI. That's it. For the first round, first layer of a review, it was the quick see the skeleton of the project infrastructure. And right now, I would like to go back to ask Damien if you would like to go to the second layer. It means, okay, what's happening inside the zone, how the things are working, and so on and so forth. I think I also need to quickly run the application so that we can compare the code with what's happening. It means what is the UI when we are talking. Damien, please.
Sure. Do you want to demo the app? I didn't understand the last part you said.
The demo, I can. Anybody else running right now a demo? I'm going to run it. I forgot to run it right now. I can easily run it.
Maybe I suggest that that if Damien or whoever's going to share their screen, they run it, and then we can compare different parts of the screen to walking through the code. So do it simultaneously, if you like it. That would make it more tied into the reality.
Yeah, I can demo locally with whatever I spun up to show you, but I won't have networking and several users, but I can show you the UI and everything. So that's, I guess, the most important part. So let me share my screen. Can I have the rights for that?
Yes. I need to make the code. Sorry, mate. Go ahead, please.
I'm going to start by explaining the DNA first. So the way I work, I usually do a diagram of the DNA. And here it's really simple because I mean the where's DNA is really like really simple, as you can see here. Like everything is public. Every entries, there are 3 entries. The one you saw in the lib.rs file that Hidayat showed, which are a here, a space, and a template. And the way I do diagrams, the hexagons are anchors, so it's like known hashes to look for things. And so basically how the DNA works is you have a space, which is an entry that collects here's. So here's are like locations that an agent will create, and each space has a template origin. So each space is made out of a template, and that's an important feature for the app. And so the way the DNA works is all the spaces can be found with the spaces anchor. So that's what we have here. Like, you know, like how anchors work, they start from the app hash, and for that the path is spaces, and then you get all the spaces that are on the DHT. Same thing for templates. That's how you get all the templates. And then if you want to find the here's for a space, it's also links, holochain links that you get from the specific space. And really that's it. It's not there's nothing really complex here. I don't know, because last time you went through the design, so I don't know if I should run through it again, but it's basically this design, but a bit more simplified and put in a diagram here.
Do you have the application running in the development or in the test?
I have it running here, yeah.
Yes, and because as I already also showed, we have a how can I say, can we go to the DNA as a Zome and where? So the entry definition of the DNA.
I can show the code, you mean?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if I go back to DNA here in the zone.
Yes. So and lib.rs.
Lib.rs. So
yes, great. Yeah, here. Would you please show us when we use what is the template, spaces, and here it means we already know, but right now to map and specifically because template and a space can be. And would you please one by one show us what is the template, what is the space, and what is here in that?
Yeah. It's hard to show a template because it's an abstract concept, but I'll try to do my best. So a template is really just a name and a surface. And what we call surface is that was the original design, which everything is kind of abstract and generic. So there's no assumptions on how to render things, on how it's going to be displayed. And so it's just a string for actually putting JSON in it and putting whatever struct or object you want. And here what we are actually doing is putting HTML directly as JSON, but in the JSON string it's HTML that will be rendered in the app. So if I show the app, when you create a template, so you have the name to that's the first field, to just have the way to reference your template. Then you have to directly type HTML or SVG as the surface, and so you'll have to specify because I don't auto detect it, but that's just how it's going to be saved. And once you've done that, you can render it and preview if the rendering is what you're expecting. So it depends on your template if it's actually renderable or not. I can show a quick example because there are already templates in the UI code that are hard coded. That's the templates here. It's a bit hard to read, but just need to copy paste it. And if maybe I need to put, no, it doesn't work. It's demo time. There he is. So the template you can't really see here, but there's placeholders in the template where it's what I think Eric showed the last time. It's this syntax here where you have to put %% the name of the templated parameter, and so it displays here in the preview. But once you create your template, it's going to show if you create a new space with that template. Whoops. You have all those placeholders or templated arguments that are rendered by the dialog. I hope I'm not going too fast here, but that's basically how a template works. It's really just HTML that's going to be used and imported directly in the UI to be rendered as HTML. But the difference between a space, because if I go to space, it's also there's the surface attribute here, and it's also the same JSON string. But the difference here is for a specific when you're creating a space, the placeholder is going to be changed into the actual value that has been set during the create space in the create space dialog. So here a space is really kind of the same structure with the name and surface, but here we also have the direct reference to the template, which I call origin here, and you also have a hash map, which here is a B-tree map of just metadata that you can add to your space, and that's actually quite useful for a couple of fields, like for example size, because I need to know to render the UI correctly. I need to know the width and height of the HTML to have a correct rendering. So that's metadata that's added in this entry, and that's why you have those fields in the UI. That's why I need that. That's one example of metadata. There's a couple more like that. So if I go back, how's it going, Hidayat? Am I doing too fast here?
Great, but I have a question. I was waiting to ask my question, and I'm inviting others. Please ask your question. So if there is, I got the point, the template, where to find the template, but what can you show us the link between the space on the application? What do you mean a space on it? Where it means would you please go to the exactly.
Yeah, so a space is like it's kind of like a map, or like that's why you call it a surface, like a space where you could put here, so where you could put locations, just like different way to name things here, and that's really like the main part of the app. Like it's you're just putting markers on a space on a map, and so that's why you have here your list of spaces, and if you create a new one, you have to create one from a template, and that's it. I mean,
I got it, because the demo was the previous one. I just wanted to fresh. It means a space. Actually, we need at first to create a template, make a space, and we can say this space is going to be based on this template. So the template can be picture, can be any kind of template, and then we can start mapping the things using the markers. Yes, the marker can be a smile, emojis, can be color, or etc.
Yep, exactly. It's really like a container to map things. So it's yeah, that's it. maybe the way is to see it is like template is like the class, and the space is like the instance of this class with like specific values.
Mhm. So far so good. What is here? What
Yeah,
is
so
here for?
I need to explain what a here is. And here is so the entry is also quite abstract and generic. It's a value which is also a string which is like arbitrary JSON object. So like it can be a bit confusing, but the DNA is really made in a generic and abstract way. So you can do any kinds of things with it. But then the UI that I'm showing, it's going to make this less abstract and use a specific way to use it. And the specific way we used it is that the value of a here is really a XY number, so XY Cartesian coordinates. So it's easy to really see that you're just placing something on a 2D coordinate system. But you could actually use any kind of coordinate system, 3D or a different kind of way to place things on a space. But here so that's why here it's really generic, and there's also metadata associated with the the here, so you can add more contextual meaning to the value, and so that's, for example, here in the UI, the metadata that I add is, for example, the type of marker that you're using, if it's an emoji or if it's a colored pin. So you'll have the color, and that's also stored directly in the in this entry.
So here it means when we are as a user trying to pin ourselves or to locate ourselves as a where, it can be color or exactly. It is this one. It is a one entry as a here. I'm here. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so maybe so that's a here, but I mean the underlying code is going to create a here entry and commit that to the DHT, and so other users, other agents on the DHT can get all the heres from this specific space by calling the Zome function that does that, and it will get all the links. But for a user's perspective, it's really just you're placing a marker on a map, and all that abstraction is hidden. And so that's why it's important to have the Profile Zome in this DNA. It's because every marker is really like specific to the user. So because I can have my avatar as the marker, so it has to be the avatar I set in my Profile Zome. Yeah, for me here the map doesn't display because it's fetching the picture from the web, and for some reason it doesn't really get it. But that's maybe something to improve in the DNA, is that an image is going to be directly fetched from the internet, but we could also use some kind of file storage Zome and store the file in the DNA and get it directly from the DNA.
That is amazing. I have two questions here. Number one, that when a user click I'm here, for each here that we are mentioning, there is one entry is going to be in the DHT? Yes. Okay, it means anybody, any agent create, it is a new dedicated entry for here is going to be inside the DHT, yes? Yep, and when you, for example, when you can move it around, and when you move it around, it's actually going to delete the entry here and create a new one. I see. So it means the position, the B-tree map, that it was the collection of a string and a string, which is the metadata. Exactly here, yes, BT map. It means you are saving as my location, all the metadata. If I change it, you need to delete the previous one and add a new one as the fresh one. Yes, you are not updating anything.
No, I'm not. I mean, it could have been, I guess I could have updated the entry instead, but the way it was first set up and forgot to mention, but Eric said it, like at first it was Eric and Guillaume that set everything up and I just continued on that work. And the way, I don't know if it's Guillaume or Eric, but I mean, it was set up like that, that when you drag and drop, it's going to delete one and create a new one. It could have been an update. I mean, you can ask Guillaume why he did that choice. I don't know.
Actually, it was Eric who did it, but it's either way. I wanted to ask a question here because I see in line 34 that deleting a here is actually deleting the link, not the entry. And that's really interesting to me because it means that maybe it's less DHT ops. So basically, if there is no link from the space to the here, we are going to pretend it doesn't exist. So we don't have to delete a link and delete the entry both, which is a bit wasteful. I don't know. But then you have to, in the here output, return that hash in line 42 must be the @link hash, maybe. I don't know. Eric, maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, I don't remember why I did it. I did it because I wanted to do the simplest possible thing. You can't update links. And I knew if I did a get links, I'm just going to get all the links, delete links. I'm not going to get the links of the ones I don't want. I mean, you can do get details on links and you could get the deleted links if you wanted to. But yeah, so it brings back the header hash for that link. Well, it brings back the entry, which is what matters to the UI. It needs the actual value, and it just does put and I think the header hash is the header hash of the entry. I don't think it's the header hash of the add link. I don't think we use it. We could use it for some reason, but I don't think we do in the UI. I might be wrong. I don't remember.
That's really interesting to me. Then how does the UI know the input for line 33?
Oh, no, that's it. That's why it does. That's why it does it, because it is indeed the add link header hash. That's exactly what it puts back, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to delete that link.
Makes a lot of sense.
Can we go to UI of this one to when we are deleting? Is it possible?
Sure. I just need to explain the UI code a bit then.
We can do it later. Let's see. Harlan, do you have any questions so far? Yeah.
Yeah, two. One at the top of this file where we've got the B-tree map. Just curious, you mentioned like storing the XY coordinates. I think it was at the top of the here.
Yep.
Sorry, I thought we were still there. So the keys and values would be X and Y in our case, right? Of the B tree?
No, so that's something I haven't showed yet. But the X and Y is in the value. It's not in the meta, it's in the value.
Got it.
In the meta, it's more like colors and stuff.
Yeah, it's stored as the idea of the value is that it is literally the value in the coordinate space. So it is, and so what that means, because it's generalized, means that you could have it be whatever the heck you want. And for this UI, we just used a JSON object that is an X, has a X colon number, Y colon number, and so it's a little JSON object.
Really makes sense. Could you flip back to the design, the architecture diagram?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I don't know if it's
the middle one, the lucid chart. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to make sure I got it with the here. So a space has many heres, and an agent also has many heres, right?
Well, it's the agent that creates the here entry. So the agent is the author. So there's no there's no link. There's no there's no like holochain link between the agent and the here. So there's no way to know. There's no Zome function that is get me all the here's from the agent, regardless of the space. If you want to do that, you have to go through each space, and for each space, get all the here's and then filter out for the author of the here.
And how do we filter for the author of the here? Oh, because it's the header of who created the here.
Yes.
Got
And I think I can't remember, but maybe it's also in the metadata, so it's easier to get the author. So
Great.
Maybe you put it there. I don't think I put it there to start with.
maybe
But
I
that's
did.
reasonable, right? You know, we do things like that all the time. I don't remember doing that to start with, but
Yeah.
anyways.
I have also a question. How did you connect the Profile Zome to the here? Can you show us when you are querying or the connection between profile as a zone that is as a building block? So, and how did you connect these two zones to each other?
Well, in the DNA, it's you know, you already showed it in the YAML thing. So it's so both zones are in the DNA, and then in the UI, it's in this every it's in the app where they have a store for each zone. So that's the so in the Where app, it has a so you know, it imports the profile store from the profiles project, I guess, and that's where you create a profile store and create a context for that, which is a Svelte thing. And I don't know much about Svelte and how all this works, but I mean, Guillaume could be better than me for explaining that. But this is where we create a store and context for the Profile Zome, and same thing for the Where Zome, and that's how the main web element where controller gets all its data in connection to the zones.
Actually, my question right now was more in the DHT part. It means I wanted to know that when it is one of the markers was a profile, it means
Yeah.
I could my profile. Yes, I just wanted to know, because you are using a profile as a zone in the backend, in the DNA side, in the zone, where zone. So is there any special things to query from a profile, or you just call the agent ID and it is there? Everything is there as a building block. I just wanted to see that how much it is smooth.
Well, so since I have a profile store available in the UI, then it's passed around in all of the subcomponents. And so in each subcomponent, I have a profile store and my profile, for example. So whenever I create a marker, it's going to get all my info in my profile from the profile store and add that to the here or to wherever it's required. So that's why I was talking about the stores first.
I got it. Let me summarize, and please correct me if I'm wrong. From the DNA design, you made a generic design to receive a JSON object or a string. So you pass the main job to the UI. In the UI side, we are using the profile UI and the store and fetch all the information like agent ID and blah, 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 and sending to the DNA side and DNA saving inside an entry. Am I right?
Yes, inside the metadata, the generic field for that. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I like about this pattern that you've implemented, Damien, is that it wouldn't be that efficient if every time you add a here to store the agent profile again and again, right? So the agent profile actually here is an image of, I think, 200 pixels by 200 pixels. It's the most heavy thing. Well, the HTML, no, sorry. The HTML inside spaces is not as heavy at all. So the profile image is the heaviest thing we have on the DHT, right? So it wouldn't be that efficient to keep storing the same profile in all the different heres, right? If it's only for one agent. So what Damien does, if I'm understanding you correctly, is say, okay, this marker is for this agent and has type avatar, something like that. And then you download that in the UI and you say, okay, it's type avatar, profiles, give me the avatar, right? And that's this way you only have to store it once in the Profile Zome, and you only have to fetch it once from the Profile Zome, not for each time that you encounter a here.
Yeah, and so there's like trade-offs here, because I store the color, but I don't store the image, and so the problem is if the agent updated its avatar, then if you refresh, you'll see the new avatar in the UI. But if the agent updates the colors, the markers will not update the color. And so if in between placements the agent changed its colors, it's going to have two different colors for the same agent and issues like that. So that's why we're still like prototyping and figuring out what's the best way to do this. But because at the same time, if the agent leaves and is not part of the DHT, the membrane anymore, then how much do you still need to keep that data around or not? Or if you want to save a current state of the space and the placements, you would want to save it or have a snapshot with the avatars and colors at that time and not at the current time. So there's like, that's why there's like many ways to do it, and that's why like it's not consistent around the app. It depends on where we were at in that thinking.
So I think we are going to start from UI, but before going to UI with the different layer, general overview and different component and also profile, one question in DNA, I see a signal module.
Yeah.
Can you explain us when did you use signal, how the signal is working exactly, and a little bit about signaling, remote call, or anything that you use?
Yeah, sure. So this was all set up before, but I mostly know how it works. And so it's more about doing about using where in synchronous in real time with other people. And so it's a way to signals have been implemented to be able to quickly send here's and even spaces in real time to other agents that are online. And so what happens is, so that's why here we have a Rust enum for the different kind of messages that are passed around as signals. And so it's signals, not like remote calls, because it's not that important if people don't receive it. But if you as an agent create a new space or a new template or a new here, it's going to emit a signal to all the other agents that are online. And the agents are going to receive that signal, and it's the DNA layer that's going to receive the signal and then send it to the UI, so the UI can update with the freshest information about what other people are doing online. So here how the signaling works is you have a signal payload, which is the space hash and a message. So each message is really like dependent on a specific space. So if you're not, you could actually filter out, like if you're not viewing the same space, and you could just not pay attention to signals that are not part of this space. But I mean, that's how it's been set up. And so the messages is, like I said, creating a new space template to here. Also, if here is deleted, as you can see, there's no way to delete a space or a template. And there's also pinging that I added as a way to to get the status of the agents around, because it could be useful to know if people are actually online at the same time in the space. And so so how it works is at the init, we give a grant. That's how you usually do it in Holochain. You know, like in init, you have just one. You give the grant to remote call just one method, that's one some function that's going to receive all the signals. So you give that grant at startup, and what it basically does, it receives a. See, it's really just 2 lines of code. It receives the signal, decodes it into the signal struct, signal payload struct, and emit it to the UI. And so that's how to receive signals. To send signals, it's the notify Zome function here. And so the input is a list of agents you want to send the payload to. So that's how it's quite important to know who is online and not broadcast to everyone, like just broadcast to people that are online, for example. And then it's as the input, there's also the actual signal you want to send. And so for each agent, you're going to do a remote signal with the provided signal. And that's basically how signals work. And do I show on the UI side how it's used?
Actually, thank you. I'm going to summarize the things I learned. Please correct me if there is a mistake. So I see there is a design pattern here. So I think we already saw in other application. I would like to summarize it. What is that? It means DHT, it is the share space that we are always publishing as a public data, because it is a little bit maybe expensive that I put the data. To have a better feeling of application, we do a 2 parallel operation. It means the data which is shared, we push to the DHT, and also to have a good feeling of the user interface, we are also signaling other agent directly. So it means I want to create a space, or I want to mark myself as I am here. However, I'm pushing the data new entry to DHT. I'm also sending a signal to other agent that they can directly and easily receive and change the UI. So it means generally this pattern of signaling, it is for a better feeling for the application for different agents. Am I right about the pattern?
Yeah, I would call it more like for real-time collaboration kind of thing. Like it's really about being real-time with people. And also it's the problem with between push and pull. Like you don't want to always pull from the DHT and tell me if there's something new. You want a push system where other agents just push what's new.
So got it. Did you have any challenge here? It means if it is the pattern that I'm pushing the data to DHT and also I'm signaling other agent that also they can receive it without pushing. Is there any challenge, or did you face any challenge or trick here, or it is just, that's it?
The way I follow up on the code, it was working, so I didn't work anymore on that. It seemed good enough. And I guess on the last Holochain in action, you saw how well it worked or not. Like it, not everyone received the signals. Like there's no, it's not deterministic here, but it's good enough for real-time collaboration, I guess. And there's still you can still pull with the refresh button, so you can still have your own way to get data if the signals didn't work as well.
Okay, thank you. From my side, I see Thomas has a question. Tom, please.
Yeah, hi. I thought I was looking at the code, and I was thinking to myself, how much work would be involved to make this so that the here information, which is users' perspective on the space, to make that kind of only appear when they're online. So actually, instead of putting it to the DHT, it's pulled from their source chain when they're online. Is it good? How much work would be involved to do a version like that? And what would you think of that?
Well, it doesn't seem like much work. Like the first design that pops to mind is to not publish the here entries and just have it on your private source chain. And so people will have to ask you for your here's for the space. So that would be a some kind of, maybe not a grant, but directly a node-to-node communication. Like you're asking an agent as a remote call, what are the your here's for this space, and you would get the reply immediately. So that's just a couple of Zome functions to implement, which is not very hard. Maybe on the UI side, I don't know how you would want that to work. It depends on what's the way to use it. Like, do you have to click on each agent to query them and ask them what are their here's, or do you want this to be automatic or not? I mean, it doesn't seem very complex.
The easiest thing to do, depending on whether it's about actual privacy or not, is just to hide the here's of the people who went offline from the pings and just not show them. So if what you're trying to do, though, is make sure that there's some kind of privacy about that, real privacy, rather than user experience, then you couldn't do that. But that would be almost trivial to do, because it's just in the render loop. You just check to see whether user is online before you show the here's. Or you could even do something fun, which is you could render them grayed out or something like that. You know, you could do a couple things.
Yep.
Thank you. Harlan, also you had a question?
Thanks.
Yeah, I think it got addressed, but just on that last point, you know, we already color people by their pings, right? The people are red if they have a bad ping and yellow if they have a semi-bad ping. Yeah, and so they could have a grayscale or a transparency of their here's based on the same metric.
Damien, I heard you say that you don't send pings to people who are, or you don't send messages to people who are offline, but that does mean you probably do send pings to people all the time, because you have to keep knowing whether they came back or not.
Yeah, I said that as a possibility. I don't think it's in the code really, but
Okay.
you instead, I mean, I guess it's an optimization to not send signals to everyone and just send to people online, but that's not something I actually implemented.
Right. Yeah, and of course it depends on how many people are there. I mean, it's very, very inexpensive to send a signal. It's not a thing, but I guess if you're sending 10,000, but that would be a pretty crowded map.
Yeah, it's about scaling. And just one thing about the ping, like it's called a ping, so it's just a way to know if another agent is online, but it's not actually a latency value. It's not is this person like 100 milliseconds or 2 seconds ping. It's really just the color is really more like how much time has it been since I pinged that agent. And I have a very basic color code here, where if it's less than 10 seconds, it's green. If it's less than 1 minute, it's orange. And if it's more than 1 minute, then it's red. But I mean, you know, it's arbitrary right now.
And you update that with the timer?
And so, yeah, so when I ping and I get a response, I store the timestamp, and I have a map of timestamps for each agent. And then I just compare with the current time, and that's how I determine the current color.
So I want to make sure I'm getting it. I think the first time you load the app, everything loads, the information loads from the DHT. And then after that, information just loads from signals. If anything changes in the DHT, I don't know about it unless I refresh. Then I get the information from the DHT. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
And so I'm just curious, you know, as a hApp developer, how challenging or easy would it seem to implement eventual consistency in the UI without refresh? You see what I mean? Where the UI would once in a while, periodically, every minute or 30 seconds or 15 seconds, read from the DHT and update.
I mean, I guess that's quite simple. It's just you need in JavaScript some kind of a timeout loop which calls the same function every minute or so, and it will automatically like do the pull from DHT call, and so that's really like straightforward, I guess.
Great, love it.
I think that some comments to make about that is that how well that works depends on how many people you expect to be in the DHT, right? You can do the math. And how long you have to wait before you have lots and lots of queries going out to the DHT for all data, and depends on how much data you have there. And so how you pull that. And so we've run into this in elemental chat, where for the channels, you want to have the channel showing that there is information that's new, but not load all the data, because otherwise you're loading hundreds of thousands of messages and you just don't want to do that. So it can become quite challenging to actually do this right. And one other thing that I will, because you have to think about the scale, and you have to think about where the data is stored and how often you're hitting the network and how often you're hitting the conductor. But one thing that I will say is that in the works, in the plans, it's not implemented yet, is to add in a whole system for pub sub, where you can subscribe to lots of different kinds of things on the DHT. And so for example, you could subscribe to any base, like a link, so that when something is added to that base, you can expect to get notification of that. And so a lot of the things that we're doing right now to get the feeling of real timeness, or to get the eventual consistency through signals, will be much better and much more fine-grained updates when the pub subsystem gets up and rolling.
Yeah, that's something I forgot to mention, but we're doing all this because we don't have this DHT callbacks, I would call it, like a way to like Eric said, there's currently no way to get notifications from the DHT, so you have to do this pulling. And since pulling is not optimal, then we're doing this push system via signals. So yeah, so I'm happy to hear we're going to have a pub sub system.
Imran?
I wasn't sure if this was covered, but what's the, I guess maybe it's moot because you were just talking about the pub sub scheme, but what's the trade-off for your ping loop or the timeout loop in terms of selecting a value? Like if you wanted to have lower latency, would it work all right, or is there any kind of design choice made there?
Well, it depends on what information you want to provide to the user. I mean, for me, I'm doing the ping just to let the user know if the other agents have been online recently or not. It's not giving you latency, and I don't have any way to improve latency or not. So I can just query people more often or not. I forgot at which frequency I do the pings, but it's like once a minute or something. That comes to mind, but because signals are not deterministic, so you could spam signals to have better information, but it's just a trade-off here of not flooding the DHT or just the connections to other peers.
Okay, thanks.
Just want to make a comment about the pings, which is I loved, like when I saw it, I was like, oh yes, that's really cool. And I would really love to have that available. Like I want to use it in other apps as well. I don't know if you have thought about that, but like I absolutely want it.
Yeah. Well, I did a similar thing in Snapmail, and it was more of a remote call, so I had to wait for a response, and so it has more. I mean, it's kind of a trouble because you have to wait then the timeout, 30 seconds or whatever, and so if you want to ping everyone, it's going to take forever, So here we're trying here with signals seems like a smoother way to do it. But it seems like something you would want to do in most apps, yeah.
I wonder if we should add it as something to the profiles zone, because it's about profiles, right? And it would be interesting to have that as an option when it's rendering the avatars. You could render an avatar with ping status if that was part of the profile zone.
Again, I think we one time talked about a lobby beside the profile. It means the people who are live are inside the lobby, and then this one can be inside the lobby.
I don't remember exactly the time that you're referring. Adding it to profiles, it's a really interesting. We have to think about it, but it would be really interesting for sure.
I mean, the pinging, you know, like it was easy to implement because there was already the signaling stuff, and it for like, I don't know if it's part of profiles, but for me, profiles is more like storing information about a user, and here's pinging is more about real-time communication with other peers. So maybe it's for me, it's like a different crate or a different zone, which is more about having real-time.
Yes, and I think that's why I mentioned a lobby, because it was a long time ago. But as Guillaume mentioned, yes, I also believe it is better to have in the another than something else than a profile. So something like a lobby that say, okay, it is the profile, but this user or agents are live, and right now we can send ping them or notification. So that's it. Damien, before going to UI, I would like to give a brief recap in the about the capability grant. Would you please go to lib.rs in it? Yes.
In
yes.
DNA, yeah.
Yes, here, yes. Let me give this explanation. So in the peer-to-peer system, so when you install the application, so to receive a ping or signal, so it is not centralized. You need to give the permission that I'm okay if somebody else would like to give me or send me signal, because they are going to call a function and zone function on your client, on your actually DNA. So, and that's why you need to give the permission. All the topic of the permission, so it is a capability grant or a capability token. So it means you are issuing something that you are opening a one function or one place as a door that you would receive a signal. As Damien explained, as you can see here, create capability grant, it means it is the place that you see it is in init. When you are initializing the application, you need to say this door is open, that if there is a signal, just can come to this door. That's why it's really important. I would like to make a brief on it. Actually, that's it. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. And init is one of the callbacks you have to implement. So, yeah. Do I jump to the UI now?
Sorry, can I just mention something? The capability grant there is unrestricted. So by default, by running the app, they're giving away the capability for anyone for the app to access them. But it would be nice for the UI that they were given that option. Like maybe it could be based on some criteria. That's just my thoughts on that.
I mean, sure, yeah, you could have a UI settings where you can enable or toggle off receiving signals from other or not. Like there could be a user setting, and if it's enabled, then instead of doing the cap grant in the init, it would be done in a Zome function call instead.
Well, the other way you could do it is init takes no parameters. So there's other places where you could do it, where you could generate a capability token that you have to have on the other side, and then you could give it to people, and then they could use that capability token to call you. And that would basically be saying, I'll only listen to the signals from the people who I've given this capability token to. And so you could make it a lot more fine-grained too. You could create a capability token for each type of signal, and reject. Well, no, you couldn't do that because it's the function that's being called, and there is only one receive signal function. So you can't. You would have to create, if you wanted to do that, you'd have to do other security stuff, which is kind of unusual because the whole point is small group, for where small group of people playing this game together. But in general, as a bigger lesson, it makes a lot of sense to think about that.
Yeah, totally. And where we're like assuming you're in a trusted environment, like people on your DHC are people you trust, and there's no much security issues or stuff related to that.
Right. So part of that assumption is like you can have generic JSON strings in the spaces and in the templates and in the here's, relying on the people actually putting good stuff there. Like imagine if some bad actor comes in and in this space, which doesn't allow for, I don't know, whatever, puts different here's, like it would break the UI. But I think that's actually fine, and most of all in this at this point, right?
Yeah. So if you wanted to do that and you wanted to be careful, then you would actually make there be rusty nums that would match on the type, and you would validate all, which is really important to do for scaled apps when you're going to have them out. But this is meant to be an exploratory space for, like you said, small communities, and also just thinking through the ideas of the grammatics of where.
Yep. And I mean, there's some sanitization to do in the UI, but yeah, you can, and if it doesn't correspond to what you're expected, then it's just not going to display. But like I showed, like the spaces are the surface are HTML, and so it could be unsafe, and you could add whatever code in there and just, you know, like there's a security issue here. So
thank you, Damien. Let's go to UI.
So yeah, I wanted to start with the types first, because there's one important distinction that's happening here is in the types, in this types file, we kind of rewrite in Java, in TypeScript, the same structs that we have in Rust, like for example the space entry. But so one important distinction I do here is there's the here entry, which is still the string, which is, you know, the JSON string of whatever it is. But then I have a location, which is the here string, but with the value actually changed into what the UI is expecting. So which is like I said, a XY coordinate. And so so in terms of words, the here is really like the DNA, the name of the DNA entry, and the location is the name for the object that is used by the UI. And so that's an easier way to think about things here. And so in this, with the types, and how the UI works is you have a where service. So the where service is like the bridge between the DNA and the UI, and it's really just doing the Zome calls, but it's you know, like it's a bridge. So the idea is to change it into an API that you can use in TypeScript. And this is where we're using you're changing the grammar from here to location. And so when using this API, you're adding and deleting locations and not here. But in the call zone, it's actually changing it here, the location into a here, or the other way around. So it's like a interpretation layer, or, you know, like a bridge to do that conversion.
Damien, my question, the mapping between the type from a UI and the type from the zone, it's happening here.
Yes. It's happening here, and then in the, so this is the where service, and in the where store, it uses the where service and adds a couple of more logic to it, and the other UI components, the web components, they're not going to use the service API directly. They're going to use the store API directly, and so because it's adding, it's like the store is more of a database. Like the service is just querying the DNA and like get me the info, and here's the update of the info for the DNA. But the store is really like a database where you store all the spaces and all the here's that you got from the DHT, and add some extra information or logic to it. And so that's like, for example, each space has a zoom level, because as you know, in the UI you can specify a zoom level for each space, and that's actually extra info that's stored for each space, but it's not part of the DNA, or maybe it's stored afterwards in the metadata, but it's not, it's a logic, it's data that you need to interpret from the DHT. So the store is here to do that conversion and interpretation of that data.
Go ahead, Eric.
Another comment I'd like to make about the store is that also the choice that we made is to have the store be a reactive store. And so this is why you see the writable, you see all those things are writables, because they're Svelte stores, so that the UI can be updated automatically using the reactive paradigm of Svelte when a value is changed. So it makes it super easy to build these user interfaces. You don't have to go and like try to update a widget. It's the widgets go also and look at the store using that reactive pattern that is true across Svelte or Lit element or Redux or so on. It's so it is that centralized state holding on the UI side to match the quote backend side, so that the UI renders super easily.
That is great. So previously, I already implemented one customized store for the peer share here. I'm going to explain what's happening to see if they are equal, that it can help us to understand. In the UI, each section is a web component. It means they are a standalone component. So they need to talk to each other, that if there is any change, other component can react to that changes. It means there should be a bridge between the component. So we are going to have right now, I'm asking, so there is a one layer as a store that knows about everything. Inside the store, there is another service that can talk to DNA, but it is the store that all components are going to be registered as a pub sub. If there is a change, other components can be notified and to react to that changes. And that's why I can say a store is the first layer. Service, it is the one element inside, and all components are going to be registered themselves to the store to be notified for the changes. Am I right?
Yes, that's my understanding also. And just to show one of the components, here you have, so in the where space component, you have store subscriber. So you subscribe to the where store or to specific elements of the store, and that's the part you were talking about.
Thank you.
So
why don't you just actually, let's do one little quick example. So like if you look at the one where you're doing that you subscribe to part of the profiles, and then in the render loop, that's the part that's going to be updated automatically. The render loop will get called because you're using that variable. It's like, that's the magic of this way of doing things.
Yeah, if you look at the my profile in the render loop, so it's in the the top left. So in the drawer in the top left, that's here we are now. Like it's the list here, and I just directly render the nickname and the avatar here, and even your color. and it grabs, like for example here, it grabs directly the color from the my profile store subscriber, which is what we saw in the on the top of the file. So it's grabbing directly the value from the class.
And so whenever that value changes, that will trigger a call to render, which will re-update this value. That's the part that's nice and automatic.
Yep.
Yeah, I think like this is actually crucial in Holochain, and it will be increasingly so when I think when people start actually building reactive UIs, because Holochain is eventually consistent. So if you want to get notified as soon as possible, you need UI, and that means the DNA. You need signals, and that means or some kind of DNA to UI communication. And a lot of web-based sites or old things were based mostly on pull. So I refresh the page and everything gets re-rendered. And here we need to think almost always on, okay, I got this new piece of information from the DNA, which is a little piece of information, and I have to now update the UI with this little piece of information. So this pattern, Damien, if you could go to the where store.
Sure.
And let's see how you handle a signal. Yes, exactly. Like this is the stuff that I like the most about this pattern. As in, you initialize the store and you're saying something like, hey, I'm listening for you, Zome. Like whatever you receive, Zome, notify me also, right? So here we are adding a signal handler, right? And then anything new that happens in that signal handler is going to update the store, which is going to trigger a re-render without the UI actually having to know anything about it. Like the components don't know anything about signals, right? It all gets put down into this layer, which is really the state layer. Like, I love the pattern that we are showing here.
Yeah, that's exactly one last thing in the store I didn't show, but there's the signal handler. So this is where we have a big switch case here for each type of signal. It's going to update a specific part of the store. So for example, for a new here, it's going to update the space store and update it and add the location to it, and then it will trigger it will notify the subscribers, and the subscribers will just know that the database has been updated, and then it's going to re-render the UI accordingly. So that's and like, for example, for the pings, that's what I somewhat added. It's for each agent, I have the timestamp of the last presence, and every time you receive a ping, it's going to update the store on that and just store the latest timestamp and trigger the re-rendering. So like I didn't do an overview of the whole structure of the UI, but as we talked, like it's web components based, and we're using material UI web components. And since the material UI web components do not have all of the components, I also use a shoelace components to complement some of the missing items. It's kind of a mix of whatever components you can find, but try to minimize the number of different frameworks you use to have some kind of homogeneity. But and so the way it works is, you have the top level web components that we showed earlier, which is the where controller here, and there's also the profile prompt from the Profile Zome and UI, which has its own web component. And if you go in the where controller, you see that we're using the all the material web components, which is every tag here that starts with MWC. And in there are other web components that are defined and coded here, which are all the ones that start with where, like all the different dialogues, which each one of them have their own file, TypeScript file, and obviously the where space, which is the one that does the main rendering of the space, the surface, and the locations. And that's mostly the top level view of how the UI works. Do I go on, or people have questions or comments?
Please
No?
go on, please.
Okay. So if I go back to the controller, well, I'm actually already in the controller. So I don't know how much people know how this is structured, but you have all the CSS here for this component. So if you want to add specific styles to the elements of your component, you put them there. There are shared styles that are in the shared style file, which are the ones that's going to be shared among all the components.
Damien, I think we should note that this pattern is the lit element pattern for doing web components, right?
Yeah,
and so like that style comes from the import up above. That's useful for people to see. Like for a while I was like, where the hell did that come from? Because Guillaume was the one who kind of set up this whole pattern. So I'm psyched about how it's worked out.
Yes, thank you, Eric. I forgot to mention it's web components, but done with the lit elements framework for doing components.
Question on that?
Sure.
So we're using Svelte as like rendering and reactive, but we're using lit for web components, and we're using the lit's CSS in JS kind of stuff, as opposed to Svelte's native CSS handling.
Well, actually, the reactivity is lit's. The store is Svelte's. Yeah, but I mean, Guillaume, you're the one who engineered this whole thing and the reasons for it, because your initial version, like, so a lot of this comes from the work that we did with Sin the first time around, and we worked through a set of it and then refined it and then ported it over here to where. So it's been fun to watch the evolution of it, because you were using something else as the store in lit element, but there was some pretty good reasons to not use Svelte's reactivity, but to use lit elements reactivity. And do you want to share some of those ideas, Guillaume?
Sure. So, okay, first of all, to separate cleanly the concept. So one thing is the store and reactive state, right? State management is a whole topic in UI and web development, and you can use Redux, you can use RxJS, you can use, what else? You can use MobX. We were actually using MobX at some point in Scene, I think, or at least in Profiles. And most of these libraries do more or less the same, which is centralized state management, update state, and get state with reacting the UI, right? So that's one layer, the state management. Here for state management, we are using Svelte's store. We are not using Svelte for anything else. So you might as well copy paste the two files in the whole Svelte framework that implement the stores and cut them out, and that's it, right? We are not using Svelte almost at all. We are only using the store slice of it. And then on top of that, you have the rendering.
But it's really nice. The stores are really awesome. It's really good. It's really good.
Yeah. So I can comment also on the reason that we moved from MobX to Svelte stores, which is that MobX, you can think of it as a simplified Redux. So in Redux, you have to define all these actions, which you can trigger onto the store. The store has some loop to be able to reduce actions and states to next. It's convoluted. MobX is like a simplified version of that, but it adds a lot of magic onto it. And we switch to Svelte stores because of their simplicity. because you have basically 3 things that you can do with them. You can get them, you can subscribe for them, and you can update them. And that's it. And they implement a whole reactivity system without you needing to over-engineer things and to be able to understand magic of what's happening behind, right? Sorry, I got a bit long there. Any questions here or any details?
The thing that I think is important to note here is the thing about scoped web components, because that's another big reason why lit element instead of svelte.
Yep.
So do you want to describe that?
Sure. So web components, for those of you that don't know about them, are awesome. Like are totally and amazingly awesome. What's a big web component is basically a way to define a block of UI or some element of some kind that's usable in any framework and in any browser, right? So that's really powerful. And we chose this for where also because where it's possible that in your hub you want to implement where like not this generic forkable template or whatever, but maybe in your Zoom clone you want a map of a specific thing and you want to use where for that, and you are using, I don't know, Angular as your framework. Well, with web components, you can just bring the web components that we develop for where, like actually Damien and Eric develop for where, sorry, and plug them in and they will work, right? So this is one of the things that we wanted to achieve. The only problem with web components as is right now is that they are globally registered. As in, if I have a button web component registered in the browser, I cannot register another button component. They will clash and crash the whole application. That's not so amazing. That's the not so amazing part about web components. But there is a proposal for making everything scoped, and this is what we are seeing here. This is a bigger element called where controller, and it contains a lot of little elements called MWC menu, slider, switch, right? So here is a map of the tag and the class of the element that's defining that element, right? So what you get from this is that components don't clash anymore. And you can define a button element here so for example, let's make it concrete. A menu here, a menu element here in line 561, and another element can define another menu element, right? A menu sub element or whatever, because it's using another menu, and they won't clash, right? And that's one of the key things also that we are we are looking a bit ahead, and one of the things that really excite at least me, and I know Eric is excited about it as well, is dynamic UIs, in which you can smash different UIs from different modules together and they can work seamlessly and so on. That doesn't really work when you have global registries clashing of components, right?
Well, and we already have this issue, right? In this one, you see how we're using a web component that's pulled from the Profiles Zome and the Profiles repository, totally separate place. And so if there was a chance that it was going to clash, it wouldn't work. And because Holochain is built to be so composable and have zomes be part of apps like that, that you basically have to do this, or you end up having to do some kind of thing in your naming and your classes that are going to make it work. But that's very likely going to fail because the CSS is going to fail, because the CSS is very likely named the wrong thing, and it's the wrong kind of CSS at the different levels. So even if you could get the naming right, the CSS is going to mess up. Yeah.
No, it's like the CSS is interesting. So it won't even paint. Basically, for all its history, web has done global CSS, in which you import a Tailwind or you import a big material theme, and then all the elements render with that. And with web component, you have Shadow DOM, which is basically like a light iframe, which is you have encapsulated CSS. You see here these styles. These styles are not applied to the whole element, are only applied to the elements that are rendered inside this web component, right? So a lot of the assumptions that a lot of the frameworks make actually don't work perfectly well here. So you have to be careful. The technology stack that you choose it's actually pretty important here.
But very cool to see on 503 that you are also sharing styles across components, which I've heard as a challenge with web components sometimes.
Yeah, Damian, you want to go?
Well, the shared style is really because in the styles here for a component, you're just importing a global object of your project. So that's how we're sharing styles between our own components, but it's not shared among whatever other components. And the nice thing is you can, like it's templated, so you can add your own variables and have it somewhat dynamic. Yeah, so that was
I have a question here. So with this point that we are a lot out of the scope of timing, I think it's getting really long. But anyway, why we have a lib and apps? What was the reason that we have a two section? Generally inside the libs, what was the main reason you split it up the UI to libs and apps? So what did you put inside the lib and what did you put inside apps in a UI?
Should I go, Damien, Eric?
Oh, go ahead.
Sure. So the reason is, imagine if you're building an application and you want to include where as a DNA in your application, and you want to reuse UI, right? That's a very different like use case as building a whole SPA, right? So we basically split the app and lib to make it so that whoever needs to can include just the lib, which is just exporting and making available the elements, but not defining how your HTML is looking like. If you see inside the lib folder, there is no index.html, and there shouldn't be. That's in the apps. The apps is so simple. Like if you see the where app, it's just including everything that's defined inside lib in its own opinionated way.
Can I also send parameter when I'm using it? It means which zone we can connect, which can you show us where are those settings that we can connect? When I'm going to reuse the library, also I can send some parameter as a setting, connect to this DNA, connect to this URL and blah, blah.
Yeah, that's basically where when you create the store, that's when you send the parameters. So if you want to go to the where store or web app to see, right? So when we do new where store, you see that cell client comes with the cell ID, right? So to connect to another where DNA, you would just have new where store with another cell client. And actually, if you see line 34, at the end, right? So this is a bit switch of context, but I think it works. This is the profiles store. But in line, like at the end of line 34, we are setting config, right? This avatar mode can be set to avatar or identicon, which is basically, do you update, do you upload an image for the avatar, or is it derived automatically from the agent public key? Right, so this is the config that we are making available to the consumers of the profile store. And this is cool because then all the elements recognize that config and adapt themselves to the use case that you want, right? So only changing this identicon would make the create profile form would not ask you to upload a file, and any avatar that you see, it's going to be the identical one. So this is the pattern that we are at least right now using.
Thank you. When we started for the first time, so at the beginning it was just, it forced us with the dialogue of the profile, and we had to create a profile. When it is created, profile UI vanished and we start using app. Can you explain us the flow, how this topic working? It means how the Where app can say, hey, at first you need to bring up the profile UI and force user to select the avatar and one handle. When it is there, vanished and bring me up. Can show us the flow.
I can go with my understanding, then Guillaume can add to that. That's the part I actually commented out here, because it's when I test, I always have this profile prompt show up, and it's, you know, it's an extra step for testing. So what I did is I in the where controller, I added attributes to generate a dummy profile, so I don't have to input it manually every time, and I just comment out the profile prompt web component so it doesn't pop up. But at first, what I wanted to do is add this as a setting in profile prompt, so I don't have to comment out every time and just add the dummy attribute here. But I had difficulties on Windows updating the profile prompt, so I was like, I forget it. I'll just do it in the where controller. But I mean, in the end, it would be better to just have it as a config in the Profile Zome, profile web component.
Yeah, so Damien said it nicely. The profile prompt element that you see there on line 49 is the one doing that flow. That's everything that you need to do, really. You said you're muted.
But it is commented.
But Damien just said that it's commented out because he's testing and he wants to go fast with testing, right?
Yep.
So the actual app is not commented.
Yeah.
That's not commented in the actual app.
Yeah. That's how it is usually, like that. And how it works is because they're all connected to the same profile store. So the profile prompt will update the profile store, and in the where controller you get access to that data. So that's how they kind of connect to each other. And if I comment out the profile prompt, then it's not going to update the profile store. So that's why in the where controller I use the dummy attribute to myself update the profile store at startup inside the where controller.
Damien, could you control click on profile prompt class and let's see, the class itself, which is on like on line 58, not profile store, profile prompt. Yeah, exactly. Thanks. This is generated code. We're not going to. I just wanted to show you the simple thing that profile prompt does, but this is not code. This is generated TypeScript types. Like this is not the actual code for profile prompt class, right? So never mind. Sorry. The profile prompt class, what it does is basically get my profile. If I don't get my profile, show create profile prompt. If not, show whatever the app wants to show. That's it. Like it's really simple, but it's a flow that a lot of applications are wanting to do. And at least at this stage of the ecosystem, this is the easy thing that you can throw it in there and you have something to get going, right? It's not complicated and it's easy to set up.
To summarize it, when the app is coming up, as a state management, we already have a store and some services inside. By default, the profile is going to come up. So if there is not already a created profile, So there should be some place inside the store as a state management, like a true, false, or something. It is false because it is in a state management store. Their application double check this one because it is reactive and hide itself, and just the profile is coming up. Profile is connecting to the conductor, and the user and agent can interact, create a profile. When the profile is created, the profile UI updating the store and vanishing himself. And then because it is reactive, the their application, it's going to be reactive and show on the screen. It is the whole flow.
Yep, exactly. Would it be useful if I show the code for profile prompt, or it's okay?
Yeah, that is great. However, it is long, but let's do it because it is going to
I'm sorry.
Everything. Yes.
Yeah, sure. So very, very briefly, because we already talked about what it does. Oh, wait. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Wait, it's loaded. Yes, go ahead.
Cool. So this is inside the profiles repository. This is the profile prompt.
But there is a big delay. Others also have delay, or just it's me?
Some delay, it seems, but
Okay. Should I continue or stop?
Can you just move up, move down, scroll to see? I hear your scroll, but the screen is freeze actually.
Okay, wait.
I can see it.
yeah, it's just not refreshed a lot.
Okay, let's see if it's better now. It should be. Is it better?
I see delay, but go ahead.
Okay, so profile prompt is a class. This is using the same lit element pattern. As you see, is like it's 80 lines. It's really not doing much. This is basically on first, like when the element renders, fetch my profile, right? So see if I have my profile or not from the DHT. Render. If I have a profile, render whatever the application wants to render. If I don't have a profile, render the create profile form, right? Which is the small widget that asks for the username. Like this is it. This is just to show this is a very simple but reusable flow that we like. Yeah, hope it makes sense.
Yes,
yeah.
Beautiful. Just stay there. We have a little bit delay. Just be aware when you reach. Wait a few seconds and then explain, please. So, how do you know which application is waiting for you and which DNA or DHT profile for what?
Right. So here I'm injecting the profile store, right? So I'm basically decoupling the creation and configuration of the store and the injection of the store. This is some kind of dependency injection. And you create the store with the configuration, and the elements don't know anything about that. And then the elements say, hey, request store, pass me the store that you were configured. I don't care who configured it, pass me the store. And then here inside, it already knows which DHT, which configurations, which whatever to use.
Thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay. Cool. Hope it makes sense.
Totally, totally. So it is the way that we already talked about the building blocks. Profile is just waiting, asking you to inject me a store that giving me enough information where I should connect, for which DNA I should create a profile. So, and it's going to automatically and dynamically query the target. If there is still a profile, give it back to you. If it is not, hiding everything or sending a signal to the store that I'm in the initial phase, and then prompt when a user finish the job, hide myself, change the store, I'm done, and continue your app. It is the whole flow. Amazing. I think we shouldn't continue anymore because it is a really long video. I really enjoyed it. It was fantastic. So for the closing, if I would like to say thank you, everybody, especially Damien. Thank you very much. You did a lot. So if you would like to say something as an ending, please.
No, nothing particular, but it's, I mean, it's a prototype, it's work in progress, so it's always changing and refining. So and it's a fun little project. So yeah, and I think we have a quite nice, I mean, as a, maybe my feedback as a programmer developer is I mean, I'm not from a front end background, and even for me it was quite easy to use and understand and quickly update the app to have the version we have now. So I think it's quite working as a pattern here.
Thank you a lot, and I hope another session we are going to review Snapmail with you, Damien. So
yeah, sure. Maybe that what could be interesting is in the latest HDK 1.12, there's a post commit callback, and I was waiting for that, and maybe once I update Snapmail to use post commit, we can do a session on that.
Beautiful, beautiful. The best.
I don't know what you think, Eric, if it's a good idea or not. Yeah.
It's a very good idea because this is the whole thing with signals, right? Those signals that sent out, they get received by the other end before they've been validated and added to the DHT. So really, you should be sending the signal as part of post commit, but we didn't have post commit yet. So it's a good practice, and there's a lot of things you want to do after you know that a thing has been committed.
Yep.
So that's it. Thank you. And we ended up with a good and fresh news and nice news that one day we are going to review here the Snapmail. What is a Snapmail? Let's postpone for that session. Thank you everybody for watching, and hope to see you here sharing your thought, your application, your knowledge, and I hope one day we can also learn from you and your application. Please, warm welcome to come and join. So thank you everybody. We love you and take care, and bye-bye.